I felt the front roller come around and hit my head, knock my hat off and stuff. And I knew that the next one, it would put me in far enough that it was going to hit about my ear. It was going to take the top of my head off, and that would be it. I'd be dead. And I was aware of that, and it couldn't even have been a half a second period of time. But all these things were going through my mind. Okay, that hit me there. All right. Hope I've done everything right, because the next one is going to kill me.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast.
An unbelievable farming accident almost killed Ron Tebow, and it changed his life forever. Find out what happened, what saved his life, and how he eventually became not just a farmer, but also a poet. Welcome back to the Real Food, Real People podcast. I'm Dylan Honcoop. Glad you're here, continuing with me on my journeys all over Washington State to get to know the real people behind our food.
I have a real strong belief that this is a small part, that we're responsible for the things we do. And, it's not about trying to make everything perfect. It's about having a sense that this is a big deal. This is important. What we do is important, and how we do it, and the way we present ourselves, and the way we think about stuff, and so on. It's important. And so
when you say this is important, what's this?
This is more, I'm talking about
life,
the way you live, the way, I just raise crops. That's what I do. I raise horses and cows and crops. I raise products of one kind or another. But it's important how I do that and how I conduct myself as an individual in that venture, in that process of doing things. So, you get around some people and they just don't care. They just do what they're doing. And, if they can get, something a little bit cheaper, by golly, they do it because they feel like that's them being responsible or something. They've related that to me anyway. And my feeling is, if it ain't right, I should not be doing it. I might do it anyway, but but I should not be. And I understand that. It doesn't sail over my head, and I lose that. Thank goodness, because I think it's really important. And when have we started yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Why not?
So when I was just out of school, I was
high school or college?
High school. Yeah. I was really bent on being noticed, So I got a fast car, and I was a twin, so you lose some of your identity there maybe, and so that summer from June until December, I was cutting a pretty wide swath. I'll be honest with you. I was not holding back much. I was going as fast as I could and driving my car fast and so on and so forth. And then in December, and my dad had an aneurysm that year, and the doctor, I remember plain as day, the doctor told us, well, he's going to die. So, and he had never been sick ever. I'd never seen him in the hospital. He had a little bit of back problems, but he never was sick, never did have a busted leg or anything, when as long as I was growing up. He was always real active, real capable, real strong. And then he had an aneurysm and he was shut down, had brain surgery, and it was a mess. And I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And I wanted to farm, but I didn't know how to do that by myself. And I was just getting started at anything.
Was he farming before that?
Farming, yeah. That's all he's ever done. And I think he started in 63, and that was in 73. So he'd been farming for 10 years, kind of on his own.
Yeah.
And there were three of us boys and a sister, and we all lived at home when that happened. Well, my older brother had moved away, but we were all living at home, real close family, and everybody was there. And when he had that aneurysm, it was like I was just set back. I didn't know what to do. Here's Dad, my pillar, my rock, my everything, and he's boogered up. And so that summer, when we graduated from school, my twin brother moved out that day. And I was just kind of under the assumption, well, not only do I need to help Dad, but I want to, Yeah. I don't have anything going on. I have no idea what I want to do in life other than farm. And, I had a horse that I was training, and we had cows up by Canada. That was our summer pasture. So I was doing that, and I loved that. I mean, I was in love with those cows and rounding up and the horses and so on. And they were all just common horses. There wasn't anything fancy about them. But I had a horse that a guy had given me that was a colt, and he wasn't broke at all. And so I was training on him and fiddling with him and stuff. Well, that summer we were feeding our calves here on this place, and there was a feedlot that we were feeding them in. And so we were chopping hay. We were feeding our calves, and I was working for the guy that used to own this place. And so we were chopping hay, and I got my hand caught in the hay chopper and cut it off halfway between my wrist and my elbow. And that was I was 19 years old. I just turned 19. And so here I am, and I was right-handed. And so I didn't have a right hand. I couldn't even, feed myself with my left hand. It didn't feel like, couldn't write. And so I was completely lost. My dad had this thing going on, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was working on the farm. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I had this horse I was working on, and now I'm just lost. I don't know I woke up in the hospital. I remember when I went in, just right after it happened, I was in the emergency room, I think.
Yeah.
And I looked up and I told Dad, I says, shoot, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And he looked me right in the eye and he says, I don't ever want to hear you say that again. He says, you can do whatever you want to do. That's not on the table, and I just, okay, Dad said it, so we'll see if we can make it work. Yeah. And I woke up and from surgery and all that kind of stuff, and I'm trying to figure out, you look down and you've got a little stump there, and instead of a hand, and I was lost. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to do anything, and then it was not like I could still feel my hand. Still can to this day feel my hand.
Really?
So
it feels like you have a hand there.
Hey, just a minute. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it feels like it's in the position it was in when it got cut off. I had a hold of a pair of pliers, and so here I am thinking, well, shoot, I can't ski, I can't play basketball, I can't bat, all that, can't ride a horse because you can't even get on one anymore. And so I'm thinking, well, what in tarnation am I going to do? And how am I even going to live? I can't see any way to make things work. I'm right-handed, and I can't write, can't even eat. It seemed to me anyway. That's what was going through my mind.
Yeah.
It's not the reality of what it was, but that's what was. But
in a dark place.
Yeah, really. I mean, just you can imagine. You hear kids talk about, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't, and they're so capable. They have so much in front of them, and here I was, one-handed all of a sudden, and so. Anyway, to make a long story short, I just put my head down and I said, I'm going to figure it out some way or other. I'm just, just lean into it. And, I'm going to figure this son of a gun out. And it just it's not going to topple me over. And I got a hook, and boy, I didn't want to wear that darn thing. And I had this fast car, don't forget that.
Yeah.
Had to take a new driving test, and it was a stick shift, and that was your shifter hand. Yeah. So I'm reaching across and I'm shifting, and the guy's saying, I don't think you can do this. You got to have turn signals, you got to have this and that, And I says, forget that. I'll figure it out. This is my car. You're not going to take my car. So I figured out, you can just reach across and shift, and you got your hook on the steering wheel, and you're whatever you do, I figured it out.
Yeah.
And I could still drive it pretty fast too, by the way.
What kind of car was it?
It was a Cuda. It was a 1970 Cuda AAR, and they only made a few of them, you know. And this was a.
Wow.
I looked at it the other day, and one just like mine, same color and everything, sold for $100,000, and you know, I probably
Wow.
should have kept it. So I sold it for $1,800.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, you know,
That's
so,
my dad's story too with his GTO. I was
yeah.
on the way, and
Yeah.
so they had to sell the 68 GTO.
Oh, you son of a gun!
It was my fault.
It was your
I
fault,
I
yeah.
carry guilt to this day about that.
yeah.
He sold it for $800, and I'm like, I calculated it out, Dad. If you would have kept that, what you could have made on it now would pay for the storage.
Yeah,
that whole
exactly.
time at
Yeah.
today's rates.
Yeah, you'd be just fine. But you know, it was a tough time, but it was a good time. I feel to this day that me losing my hand was pivotal. You know, I think every one of us have a little, or not a little, but a time in our life where we're at a moment of reckoning.
Yeah,
When
crossroads.
we have to make things, we have to make some important decisions.
Yeah.
And we usually don't have enough intelligence or enough experience to know that we're even in that time. But when you look back, you said, well, that was definitely. And so I'm, you know, when I was in the chopper, I'm, you know, being swallowed up by this darn thing. I'm pulling as hard as I can. And I can hear
And
my
it was
shoulder.
pulling you in.
Yeah, it was just sucking me right in there. And I could hear my shoulder, things, you know, coming loose or whatever they were doing. And I'm pulling as hard as I can. And so I didn't, you know, I just assumed. I felt the front roller come around and hit my head, knock my hat off and stuff. And I knew that the next one, it would put me in far enough that it was going to hit about my ear. It was going to take the top of my head off, and that would be it. You know, I'd be dead. There's no, and I was aware of that, you know, and it couldn't even have been a half a second period of time. But all these things were going through my mind. Okay,
Yeah.
that hit me there. All right. Hope I've done everything right, because the next one is going to kill me. And I was thinking about all this stuff, and I was, you know, this is all going through my mind, and I was calm about it and so on. I wasn't, you know, freaking out or anything. I was pulling hard, but there was no pulling back. And right at that instant, Dad was there, and he started grabbing my arm before I even knew it was caught. And he jumped over me and just run up and hit a lever on the machine that reversed everything, spit me back out. And I'm standing there looking around. And I didn't know whether I was alive or dead. I had no idea, because I was so sure that I was going to get killed right there, that it was going to kill me, that I wasn't keenly aware that I'm still alive. And I'm trying to figure it out. And I, you know, this was probably another quarter of a second or something.
Yeah.
But I figured out, okay, I'm alive. So I was thankful, you know, and that was really important for me, you know, on down the road, as I tried to reconcile a hand with a hook and looking at that, it didn't look right. Oh man. And so, and I even had a hand, you know, a fake hand that it was all state industrial covered. So I said, well, I want a hand instead of a hook. And so they gave me one, you know, made me one, and put it on there and stuff. And it was just like a club. And I knew when I put it on, well, this can't do anything. You can't hold a glass of water. You can't do anything with it. But it does open and close, or it did open and close. So, well, that's better than nothing. I can probably make that work. But it was so delicate, and it wasn't delicate, but it was delicate compared to, you know, picking up bales and stuff. You couldn't even begin to pick up bale. So anyway, I ruined that right away. I just destroyed that thing, and I didn't mean to. I really wanted it to be good. I wore it one time in public, and you know, some people were kind of okay with it. You know, I mean, there's a stigma that, particularly kids, but even my buddies, my pals around town, see that hand and they thought, okay, well, Tebow's back, you know, and no, no, Tebow's not back. This is a new Tebow. This is not the same old Tebow. And so, it was an important time. And I decided then and there that it was important enough for me that I began living my life differently. And the things that were important to me, they just shucked away like the wind just blew them away, like chaff, just blew it away and it was gone. That was so important, those girls I was trying to impress. Oh, I was dating a girl, by the way, and she dumped me cold. She says, I just can't handle it. I can't handle a one-handed guy.
Really?
I can't get
Wow.
along with that. And I thought she was pretty sweet, and I, that was a big deal to me. And I don't think to this day, if she remembers it, she's never said anything to me about it. I haven't seen her much at all since then, but she never made any more contact with me, and I never made any more contact with her. And I wasn't mad at her.
Yeah.
It's just she couldn't handle it. Well, I can't change it either. So we're both stuck in the mud here, buddy, because I only got one hand, and that's the way I'm going to be the rest of my life, and that's okay with me. But if you can't handle it, there's no need in us playing games. And it was that sort of mentality that I just fell into, or, was, that was who I was from that moment on. And so, as I go along, I tried writing with my left hand in college, and I couldn't read my writing, and there was a lot of writing involved, long papers and things like that. And I had some really dear friends that helped me out. That, there was a lady that she knew how to type. She could type faster than I could talk.
Wow.
And so it was really helpful. And so I've had some really good people in my life that helped me. Didn't even know they helped me, but they helped me anyway. And I really, I still remember them dearly in my heart.
Quick break to thank our sponsors. Real Food, Real People podcast wouldn't be possible without Mana Insurance Group supporting us. Thank you very much to them for their support, as well as just being who they are, which are really honest, straight up, straightforward, good people in a world when it's hard to know who you can trust. And I trust the folks at Mana Insurance Group with my insurance needs. They work with a lot of different companies. They can find the right fit for you, and they help you plan ahead rather than just react when something goes wrong. Check them out online, manainsurancegroup.com. Also, Dairy Farmers of Washington supporting the podcast with their generous sponsorship. You can find them at wadairy.org, where they're constantly sharing the stories of the real people behind the dairy products that we eat here in Washington State, as well as more information about those dairy products, their nutrition, their sustainability, and so much more. Really appreciate what they do to tell the real story of Washington Dairy, wadairy.org, the Dairy Farmers of Washington. Now back to our conversation with hay farmer and poet Ron Tebow in Moses Lake.
So I got out of that and started chugging along, and it was like a steam engine. It kept going faster, and pretty soon I'm clicking along. And
What were you doing?
When I got out of when I got my hand cut off and stuff, I farmed for another couple of years, working with Dad on the farm, and he was getting well, very well, and
so he recovered from the aneurysm.
Yeah, he did. He recovered fine, and
wow,
had no long-term effects from that at all, and I could get on a horse, by the way, got right back on, and I thought, well, this ain't no big deal at all.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, it was like. Okay, you haven't got the hand, but you weren't going to do anything with that hand anyway. It's about your connection with that horse and how you connect with him and get him to do what you want to do and set it up and so on. You don't need your right hand to do that. You can do that with your left hand too.
Yeah.
And so that taught me a lot. Being around that darned horse, and he was a dud of a horse. Not at all one of my favorite horses, but I just decided I'm going to do something. I don't even know what, and I didn't care what. And I got an offer to go down to Oregon And I lived with a family, a really good family. And I lived with them, and I was going to teach school down there. I was always good in math. And they needed somebody in a private school down there to teach math. So I went down there. As soon as I got down there was no opening. It never was. And I didn't know it. I thought there was. I thought I understood them. They said there was. And so I got down there was no opening. I had no job. I was just living down the Willamette Valley. And when I drove down there, I had a brand new car, by the way. I'd bought a brand new car. And the state gave me, I can't remember the dollar amount. I think it was $16,000. And they gave it to me at $200 a month or something like that. It was just a little bit of money each month. And but that's what I was living on. That was plenty for me to live on. I was living with a family, didn't have to pay any rent, and it didn't have to buy groceries and stuff. And these people, I think they sort of felt like we're helping a handicapped guy, a guy that had some trouble. Well, little did they know, I'm kicking my heels up, man. I'm having fun. I'm chasing girls, and just like I always had. And so, when I got down there, but another guy thought he was going to help this handicapped guy out, and I'm going to give him a job in an insurance office, and I'm going to pay him $300 a month. And I didn't know the first thing about insurance, but I found I really liked it because I could help people. And I started seeing the inside of me it was so important for me to help people. Just reach out and help them some way or other. And to this day, it's still important to me. So, I being in the insurance business, you don't even talk to people unless there's something wrong. I mean, they don't like to talk insurance and so on, but generally speaking, but it was real rewarding for me to help people in their time of need. I remember a lady got in a car wreck and one of her kids got killed, and it was just heart-wrenching. I mean, it was terrible for her, and I talked with her quite a little bit, and she felt, or she told me anyway, that she felt better after talking to me. So I thought, this is really important to me, and I want to incorporate that into who I am and how I live my life and stuff. So, so I was down there for a few years, and pretty soon I said, somehow I want to get back in around cows somehow or other. And I'd gotten married at that time, and my wife and I were driving around just out in the country, and I saw these cows, and I said, whoever owns those cows is probably going to need some help. And we snooped around and found the guy that had those cows, and he says, you won't believe this, but my hired man just quit today. I'll hire you today.
Wow. And
I says, I'm your guy. So I started working for him. And it was just like, okay, I said to myself, I'm going to get around these cows again somehow or other. I'm going to get out of the insurance business. I'm going to get around cows somehow or other. And these people were gold, pure gold all the way. They were some of the best people I've ever met in my life. But it was because of it. I felt like it was because I said to myself, I'm not giving myself a bunch of options here. I'm going to get around cows. And I saw them, and I said, there's a bunch of them there. They got to feed them somehow or other. And, just went snooping around and, motored into their place or, where they lived and so on. And they had about, 400 head of Brangus cows. And he was an elderly guy. He was probably 70 or 75 years old. And he couldn't do it, And down there in the Willamette Valley, they had 3-string bales. He couldn't even lift them, And here I was, I'm horking these things around. You can lift those with a hook? Oh yeah, watch this. And I stacked them up, and you get a truckload in, and everybody else was huffing and puffing, and I'm, at that time I was just spring steel all the way, So I'm just working my hind end off, and I'm huffing and puffing a little bit, but nothing like they were, and I just did what I did, and get ready to load hay on the pickup to go feed, or the trailer, whatever it was. And I just load the bales up, it was no big deal to me. But they were like 150 pounds, and so it was just a really important time. And the one thing I noticed is we started feeding in about August of the first year I was there, and from the day we first started feeding, it rained, and it was either raining or snowing every single day we fed. And I wondered at the time when I first went on this place, I wondered, why do they have barns everywhere? What's the big deal? Because I'd always worked out in the open, you Krells were out in the open and everything. Why do you have all these barns around here, roofs everywhere, Yeah. Well, it's because it rained all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, it rained every single day when I was feeding. And I said, this is for the birds. I'm done with this. And,
where was this at?
It was down at Lacombe. Well, you know where Albany, Oregon is?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. It's halfway between Salem and Eugene is Albany.
Yeah.
And then east of that, about 15 miles, a little town called Lebanon.
Okay.
And then outside of Lebanon is a little town called Lacombe, and it was all it was is a school and a grocery store, gas station, hardware store combo.
Yep.
One store. That was the whole town, and they lived in that they lived just outside of that little town. And it was one of these show places where a guy in California had bought it. They had the painted fences, and it was beautiful. They had a big, sprawling ranch house that was all one level, and they had it was like a duplex where they shared the living room. Mm-hmm. And so they had their own kitchen, but the living room was shared. So there was a house, kind of a separate house living deal on each end. And they would come up every once in a while, the owner would, and I met him. And he was in the hangars on aircraft. They have to have certain kind of hangers that hang the wires and, that they run all the wires and the tubes and everything through. And they had a rubber lining on that. And as soon as he saw my hook, he says, "Hey, how do you get that rubber on there?" I said, "Well, I just send it in. They put a new one on there or whatever, I said, these last about a month. And a month, he says, "You're going to go through 12 of them in a year?" I said, "Well, so far, yeah. Hopefully not all the time." But
yeah.
So he says, "I think I can help you out." So he took one of my hooks with him, and I've never heard from him since then. Not one.
No kidding.
Not one word.
Still
He's
waiting
got one
for
of my
him.
hooks somewhere. So I don't know what happened. I still don't know to this day.
Yeah, how does that work? How does that stay on? So if you're moving
The
a
rubber?
bale, it doesn't just.
It's vulcanized on there. That rubber is.
Yeah.
This one is about a week old, and you can see on my arm here, you can see where it's cracked.
Yeah.
That's from beating on stuff. They
you
had.
use your arm as a hammer.
Well, then normally, look at it. See how it's all gemmed up there?
Yeah.
That's from hitting stuff. I missed this, or quacka. This is all busted up. I need a new one in the worst way. But when they first started building them, they didn't have the steel part on them. Mm-hmm. And I says, "Hey guys, let's put a little steel on it. That will help me out a lot." So they put it on there, and so I've designed a lot of things on this hook that make it a little more usable friendly.
Yeah. How does that even work? How does it stay attached to your arm?
It hooks on my elbow. I've got a stump about that long.
But what? I guess I've never thought about it. How does
down in there?
Because if you're lifting a bale, that's some torque.
Pretty strong guy here.
Well, yeah, but how does the hook keep up and stay on?
Yeah,
that's impressive.
It goes around it fits. If you think about it, if you could get something hooked on the back of your big bone in your elbow.
Yep.
And then it doesn't come off because you've got two little ones that kind of stick out on the side.
Yep.
And this goes around. It just kind of fits.
Yep.
I just fit my arm down in there, and she just stays hooked on. Take it off every night.
Huh.
That way you're safer for your wife when you're sleeping. She brings that up.
Don't leave that hook.
First time we were dancing, I go to twirl her around, waka, right? That's a lot harder than arm. We quit dancing right then. The dance was over.
That's funny.
So anyway, it's there's just some logistics of having a hook that are different, but they're not worse. It's not worse than a hand. It's just different than a hand. And
Yeah.
as soon
There's
as I
probably
came,
more certain things that you can do that you can't do with a hand.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
stick the hook into something hot to pick it
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I tried to
pound
do
on
that and I
stuff.
burned my finger.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. That was a hot piece of steel.
Yeah,
I just
you're
welded.
a weenie too. Don't forget that. You just reach down and grab that and pick it up. No big deal. So they're just. Once I got my mind around the notion that this is just different. It's not worse. It's not better. It's just different. It's just like the guy that's strong. Really physically is strong. Doesn't mean he's better than you. It just means he's different than you. And he can, or the guy that can think. I've been around a lot of engineers in my life, and they just have a way of thinking about things that doesn't make them better. It just makes them different, and they have an addition. It's like one of the ingredients in the soup, so to speak.
Yep.
And they just add to it, and that's sort of where I'm at. And but once I got my mind, it was important for me to get my mind around that notion that this isn't better and it's not worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
So little kids come up. It used to really bother me when kids would stare and point and stuff.
Yeah.
Mom and dad, hey, do you see that guy? He's got a hook or he's got something on his arm. And shoot, I get those kids off to the side. Hey, come here. You want to see this darn thing? You think you can get it to open? Well, I don't know if I can either. And I tease them and I play with them and so on. And I would say at least 75% of them go back to their mom. Hey, I want one of those. I want to get one of those. I said, I know how you get them. Just stay away from that.
Don't do any of this.
It's not all it's cracked
hay
up to
chopping.
be. Yeah, really. So, but it's just a mindset. It's just a mentality that says, I got something to add. So it changed everything for me. It changed everything, whether it be farming or doing poetry or whatever it is. It changed everything. So, here I am. My first wife and I got divorced, and, I was having a tough time with it. I loved my family and loved her as far as that goes, and was thinking this is forever kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And so when that fell apart, I'm thinking, well, shoot, what do you do? How do you do this? So I was talking to a preacher, a guy that I knew in town here, and he was his mindset was, and I think it had a lot to do with just the way he had lived his life. Everything was biblical oriented.
Yeah.
And one of the things they talk about is the gifts from God, the gifts of the Spirit, I think is what they call it. Like prophecy and evangelism and things like that. He said, well, what do you figure your gift is? And I said, my gift is farming. I'm pretty sure people need to eat. And I'm pretty sure God tapped me on the shoulder and said, is there any chance I get you to grow some food? I said, yep. Raised my hand and said, yep, I'll do that. And so I feel like I'm not just living. I'm not just punching a time clock. I'm doing something important. And, everybody's got to eat. And that's the reason when Sue started doing her thing, the agri-dot culture, I said, what you're doing is so important. I think it's more important than you even realize. Because, for people to understand that these aren't just a bunch of yahoos out here, a bunch of hayseeds that are doing something. They're doing something they were called to do, by and large. You're not going to be a farmer too long unless you've got it in your blood.
Yep.
And so from the time that I started, I said, I started raising heifers and so on, and then just kind of morphed into custom haying. A lot of what I do is custom haying. I custom fed cattle for a while, and I really enjoy animals. But the farming part of it was like, okay, somebody's got to do this. Are you willing to do it? Yep, I'll do it. And when you have a mindset that says, I'm not just going to be center cut, I'm going to be at the top of the class in terms of putting hay up or baling hay or whatever. And the guy that I farm for lives over on the coast there. And I told him, I said, one thing I want you to know from the beginning is that I will treat your stuff as if it was God himself asking me to do it. I said, I won't cheat you. I won't cut any corners. I'm just going to do the best I can at it. And what that is what that is. Sometimes it'll turn out better than other times.
Yeah.
But there's probably a lesson in there or something, some reason why it happens. I don't know what it is, but what I can say is I don't control the weather, but I do control whether I'm willing to go to work.
Yeah.
I control that part. So when it's time to work, it's time to work. Hot, cold, whatever. It's time to work. So I work. And it's been something I feel like I can hold my head high on over the course of my life, as it relates directly to farming. That's what I've done, and I've done it the best I could. I don't think I'm extraordinary. I just think I'm one of those guys that does what they can do and do it the best they can, and that's all. That's all I feel like I've been asked to do, and I've tried to do that, tried to uphold that. But when I met Sue, when we were dating and stuff, we went to a poetry gathering over in Ephrata, and I told her, I said, I can do that. She
So
said,
you hadn't been a poet before then?
No, not really. The only poetry I'd done some in school, and I always enjoyed words and how you could put them together and come up with some statement. And I was always trying to impress some girl somewhere. and I flunked so bad at that. I'd come up with the Shakespearean, words together, and it sounded so good when I thought it in my head. And he'd come out and she'd say, "You're a quack, man. You're a weirdo," or something, kind of a deal, or at least convey that to me. Yeah. But I told Sue, I says, I can do that. And she said, well, okay, I'm not questioning whether you can. I'm questioning whether you will. And I said, yep, I will. And so by the next year, she said, I want to see you up on that stage, same stage, in 1 year from now. So I come home, and poems started coming to me in my mind, and there were so many of them that they were jumbled together. The words that and so I had to kind of discipline myself. Okay, get this one done before you start on that one, and then get this one done before you start on that one. And so I probably had 40 or 50 poems in my mind that I'd never written down. Had them all.
What would you say your style is? Are these like narrative, telling a story, or painting a picture, or kind of what?
These are just the dumbest things you ever heard in your life.
I doubt that.
No, they're all from personal, either viewpoint or an experience. Or there are some that I've written that I'm really proud of. I am really proud of them. I wanted to write a poem that just expressed how I feel about the patriotism that is necessary in a free society. And so, I kind of rattled it around my head, and I feel, in all honesty, I don't think I can take much credit for any of this, because words come to me that it's like beyond me. It's way above my intelligence level. And they just float into my mind, and I put them together, and it's kind of like somebody who understands calculus or understands engineering, or it's just a gift they've been given, and that's kind of where I feel like I'm at. So, but I wanted to write one about the veterans. I want to write one about my mom and my dad. My mom, and then one about my dad, and I'm really proud of the poems that I've wrote regarding. I wanted to write one about Sue, and how we met, and what I thought, and what was going through my mind, and how it all worked, and all that, and I did, and I'm proud of it. I don't think it's anything that is going to sell 1 million or anything like that.
But you did do a book.
I did do a book. Actually, I wrote the poems, and Sue did the book. Because I don't know the first thing about publishing and everything, but
where can people find that? Like where?
Oh, it's gone. It's
out of print.
we sold them all, and the master copy of it got ruined somewhere. So
shoot.
Now our
don't you know anybody who has a copy somewhere?
Oh, I have a copy.
Oh, okay, good.
I have a copy. I can't give it to you because it's my last
no,
one.
I know it.
But I just wanted something that the family could have or something, and so we just took the poems that I wrote and just kind of put them on a book. And Sue's got another book on the computer, and maybe someday we'll publish it. Like she did her book.
Yeah.
You've seen her book.
Yeah.
And I just told her, I said, when you're going to do this book, remember that this is a long, long, long time that people have this. They're liable to. They could have. It could be passed down generations from now. So make sure you do it, something that you're proud of and something that is first class, as best as you possibly can. And the book that we first did, it was just kind of thrown together and something. I mean, it was stapled together and it was decent, and it had the poems in it, or some of the poems in it. But the more important thing was that we just had something, and it was a learning process. And so I'm not overly proud of that book, though it is a book. The next one it'll be decent, it'll be something that. But I don't do a lot of performances anymore, but I've kind of morphed into a notion that it needs to be important. What I go to do, I toured with a country western singer, and I opened his shows for him. And we went to Montana State, and Diamond Rio was there, and they needed somebody to open for him. And this country western singer was sure he was the guy. And they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Is there any chance you'd open for us?"
No kidding.
I said, "Well, yeah."
You opened for Diamond Rio?
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
And so the thing about poetry is you get the crowd really focused, because they got to listen to what you're saying, or they don't get it. And they were laughing. There was like 5,000 people in this auditorium, and they were just having a great time, And it was really a good performance. And when you're on stage, there's so many lights, you can't really see that good. But I could tell they were having a good time. And when it was all done, Diamond Rio as a group was a little high-headed. They were kind of thought more of themselves than I figured they ought to. Because to me, they were just folks. We were both in a green room together, and I thought, well, here you are and here I am, and we're both even, Stephen. Yeah, it's not the way they come across to me. I don't know what they are, but anyway, I toured with this guy, and I was going to open his shows, and he was such a doink. He was just he got thrown in jail.
Oh man!
And I didn't know him at all. I'd opened for him out here at the county fair and here in Moses Lake, and he asked me if I would open for him and travel with him and stuff. And so I did, thinking, yeah, maybe I'll do poetry instead of farm. I don't know. Yeah. And so I did, I don't know, hundreds of shows.
Really?
And met some cool people. Boy, I really did meet some cool people. I opened for Ricky Skaggs and down in Tri-Cities and Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. I opened for them in Chihuahua. And, got to meet these folks. And it was just cool because Ricky Skaggs, all he wanted to do was go fishing. He heard that I was from Moses Lake. Hey, Potholes Reservoir is right down the road. I hear there's some good fishing there. I said, yep, there is, and I know how to catch them. And he says, let's go fishing.
How did he know about that?
Well, I don't know.
Here's a guy from across the country, famous, country music artist.
I think he's, he was interested enough. I mean, we talked after his deal was done, and mine was obviously done. And we sat there around his trailer, and I think he was interested enough in fishing that he looked that stuff up before he ever came.
Yeah.
He had his people, whoever, hey, where's a good fishing spot? Yeah. I hear that, Potholes Reservoir's got some good bass in it. Really? There's good, well, And so when he and I were talking, hey, I heard about this, and he brought it up, and I said, well, yeah, they have tournaments there all the time. catch these big buggers, these 5-pound bass and so on. Well, we need to go there, and
Did you take them fishing?
No, we didn't. Neither one of us had time, but I was farming,
Yeah.
But it was just cool, because you got to see what the guy was really like. You hear him sing and you think, man, he's talented. Good grief, he can play that whatever, he was playing a mandolin that day, but and sing, he could sing, and I was really impressed with him, and he signed a deal that I had, and it was cool. It was cool. Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, they're just down home folks, and the songs that they were singing, at least they were singing that day, were like, yeah, you thought about that when you were out swimming. I know that. You were just doing some regular old thing, and you thought of this song, and you put it in music, and now you're making millions of dollars off it. But they were just regular folks,
What are you thinking? Fishing in the dark?
No,
Is that what
I
you're
was
thinking
about the one where the little girl is twirling around, and she had her little crinolines swinging in the. Can't remember the name of the song or whatever, but it was cool, and it was. So, I met some people that I would have never otherwise met, and when it was all said, and like I was telling you, I did the deal with the teachers. I didn't know if I was going to connect with them at all, but I got to visit with them in their setting, in their
native habitat,
get together, whatever you call that thing, their conference, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
And so it was cool. I really enjoyed it. And but like here the other day, the state representative's running for re-election, and on his kickoff deal, he said, "Hey, is there any?" And I put up his hay for him. So he said, "Is there any chance?" And we're buddies, and. Is there any chance that you'd come and do a couple of poems at my kickoff deal? So I said, well, sure, And there was a doctor there, and I did a poem that talked about a doctor and how they charge a plenty, and and I wasn't upset with them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that and so it was just something that a way that I can express my feelings. Yeah. But I felt all along since the very beginning that this is not just a candle in a cupcake, so to speak, that you light and so on. It's important. It has value, and you can either say important things, and sometimes just laughing is important. Sometimes it's important, I think, to just kind of kick back and laugh about stuff and so on. And
words are important.
They are. They really are. So. When you have that sort of mindset, it changes everything. You're not just blabbering; you're saying something, and so that's kind of where I felt like I was at in the poetry deal and the farming deal. It's, I don't do anything spectacular. I don't have the latest equipment and the newest and the whole technology, and I'm not into all that.
Yeah,
I wish I was, but it costs a lot of money, and I don't need it for what I'm doing, and it's just important to me that whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's poetry or husbanding or grandparenting or farming or whatever it is, that I do it the best I can, because that's all I've got to offer, And I think that's, to me, that's what's the most important part about farming and what is in front of us today,
Yeah.
There's so much talk about chemicals and how we should eat and what's going to kill us and what's not going to kill us and all that stuff. The people that are doing that, they're doing it for a reason. They're doing it because, not just because they can make money, because a lot of times you don't. Look at this year, for instance. Good grief, our costs are up at least half again what they were last year, 1 year. And I'm thinking, I don't know whether I'm going to make any money or not. I know 1 year I lost 20% of my calves at birth. So I knew right off this was a year I was going to make zero money, profit-wise. There was going to be no money left over. I was going to be lucky if I could pay my bills. And I knew that. And I was still excited to farm.
Yeah.
Because the job that I had to do was exactly the same as it was the year when calves were $1.50 at that time. My job was the same. Whether I made money or didn't make money didn't change what my job was.
Yeah.
So, and I honestly believe that is the driving force among farmers in the world today. At least in the little world that I live in.
Yeah.
The people I know, they're 100% sold out to doing a good job.
They're not just in it to get rich.
No.
I say that, and anybody in farming laughs.
Yeah.
Get rich.
Yeah. Get rich.
Good luck.
But in all honesty, we're getting to the age where we're going to retire, do something. We're going to do something different. As time goes by, you can.
Yeah.
The clock turns, and you can feel that there's a new season coming on, and so as we think about that, we have absolutely zero retirement, except that dirt out there. That dirt is our retirement. We've put every penny we've had into the machinery and the dirt and the cows and the horses and all that stuff, and there's enough there that we can live comfortably the rest of our life if we didn't turn another wrench. So there is a retirement. Talked to the accountant here a while back. Well, what happens if I sell everything? Man, there's going to be a huge tax liability.
Yeah.
I said, well, I haven't paid any taxes along the way. I really haven't, because with farming, there's so much expense that you're, by the time you buy a piece of machinery, you can depreciate it out. Yeah. So your income looks like it's zero. But
your gross number, what's moving through in and out, because the income.
There's a lot of money comes in, all that money goes out, and you look at your bank account and
you try to hang on to a couple
darn
bucks.
Thing's still zero. What happened? I had quite a bit of money come in this year, but it's all gone. But we put it into machinery and land and that kind of thing. So I said, I don't mind paying taxes. It doesn't bother me. It's just, one big lump sum. You think, well, that's terrible. But the reality is I've actually deferred my tax liability, to the time when I can probably afford it the best. And, when you sell that stuff, you do get some money out of it.
So what are you farming right now?
I'm farming about 500 acres and it's primarily hay. It's
what kind of hay?
Alfalfa hay and grass hay, those two. And, I rotate the alfalfa out and make oat hay out of it, but that just goes to cow feed. I've got about, 80 head of cows or so, mama cows. And in all honesty, the thing that is my vacation or my rejuvenation thing is the horses and cows. First the horses and second the cows. Yeah.
Well, for beef.
Yeah, they're all beef cows. Yeah. And there's just something about seeing a calf born and seeing all that happen without any intervention on your part. Yeah. You're just sitting there watching it. You're saying, another miracle. Yeah. There you are. If that ain't a miracle, I don't know what is, but that looks like a miracle to me, and it balls just like a miracle, and it, just like a miracle, and so it must be a miracle, So there's some real value in that stuff that I think is somewhat lost in the hustle and bustle of life.
Yeah.
You see a colt that's born, and they get up and they run, and they don't have a care in the world. It's just like kids, you see them, they just do what they do. Yeah. These colts, and the next thing you know, they're old enough, you start working with them, and you start bonding with them, connecting with them, and, they're contrary. They don't want to do what you want them to do. So you set it up so what they want to do is exactly what you want them to do. Yeah. And they think they're winning, and you're winning. And next thing you know, you're sitting on their back. And they're twirling around, or they're working a cow, or they're, on a cow or something, I mean, things are happening that they never even, they were born to do it. They were bred to do it. All their genetics say you can do this.
Yeah.
And yet they didn't have a clue. That's what they were going to end up doing. And you just set it up to where they can. It's like you know, you're just right in the groove of where you're supposed to be. You can see it so quickly with cows and with animals. You know, you can see it so. You get a calf. You know, we had a calf this year that was it was a twin, and I didn't even know it was a twin. I just knew it was a calf, and I couldn't find its mama. So I staked them out. I tied a piece of string to a tire and to their leg, and waited till some mama cow came and got them. And one of them, the cow came up. She had a calf fall on her. She come up. Hey, it's right here. Here's the dinner table. You know, and she's raising both of those calves just like she didn't know any better. The other one didn't give a hoot about it. I know which cow it is, and I'm looking. Come on, this is your calf. What are you doing? Well, she was towing another one around. She said, "I got one. That's enough for me." And she didn't give enough milk for two anyway. So we just brought it in and nursing it. You know, just bottle feeding it and stuff. And so there's so much value in that stuff that goes beyond whether you make money or whether you're, you know, famous or you know, anybody taps you on the back. Or it all comes from the sense that I understand there is a higher power, and I'm living within that, and that's pretty big. That's bigger than anything I could enunciate. So, you know, the poems, they're not mine. You know, I'd like to claim them, but they're not mine. They're, you know, when I wrote the one about my dad, it was something that so poignantly said how I felt about him that, and he told me afterwards, he was kind of crying, and he says, "I don't think I can ever live up to that." I said, "Dad, you already have. You know, that's where it come from." So, you know, those kind of things are important to me.
Yeah.
And it's just who I am as a farmer. Nothing special, but I do sense that it's way bigger than me, and it's way bigger than the job I'm doing. And so the only thing I can do is the best I can, you know.
Well, and the hay that you grow becomes feed for cattle that either produce beef or milk, I'd imagine. I know my dad's dad fed almost exclusively alfalfa out of this area. And he would come over here and he wanted to see the fields himself. And all the years that he dairied, he fed that alfalfa. Well, that turned into an awful lot of milk.
It did, yeah.
So while you aren't producing food that goes right under the shelf, you are.
I am. You know, the guy that I farm for, he tests every single cutting of hay. Every one. We go up and down the stack and pull samples out of that stack randomly through that stack. And not one time have I produced hay that did not test what it should have. It was never baled late. It was I've done it for 20 years now. This is my 20th year. And I not one time have I ever not baled it on time. Doesn't mean it didn't get rained on. Doesn't mean that everything tested exactly right, because there's so much that's out of your control.
Yeah.
But as far as what I can do, I can honestly say there's never been one time that hay needed to be baled and I wasn't there baling it, you know, in 20 years. So,
yeah, making hay is tricky because really it's Mother Nature. You know, it's the sun and the wind that do most of the work. Yeah. You just cut it.
Yeah.
And then you got to get it
and
into a bale.
At it, and you know, Rocky would always tell me, he said, when we were putting up grass hay, he says, "Ron, what you got to do is cut it and then go fishing." He said, "Go fishing. Don't even worry about it. Don't think about it. Don't look at it. Don't keep going and testing it." And I mean, I couldn't, but I was just, you know, we were in Washington, D.C. one time. Sue got an award, and we were in Washington, D.C., and I didn't have hay on the ground, but I had calves on the ground. And I'm thinking, man, I got to get back there. That's all there is to it. I got to get back there. There's something going on, and I don't know what it is, but I need to be there, you know. And so we'd be gone for, you know, it might be gone for 3 or 4 days, and I'm just chomping at the bit to get back because there's something going on, and I'm afraid that I might miss something in that I should be doing that I'm not doing.
Yeah.
And so I think most farmers are that way.
Yep.
I think that is the common thread that runs through them all, is that this is all I can do.
Yeah.
This is my job. Even if I'm not going to be a farmer my whole life, as long as I'm here, all I can offer is my labor, my personal input.
I think you're keying in there on one of the reasons that explains why farmers are willing to put in ridiculous amounts of effort and hours. And a lot of people are like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And of course, some years they'll say, oh, well, I see why you did that. Look at all that money you made. And other years they're like, why did you do that? You lost money. You worked your tail off all year long and you lost money. Why would anybody ever do that? And I think what you're explaining right there is the reason. Yeah. Because, people say, well, it's a lifestyle. And but there's more to it than that. You're a part of the farm. Well, it's a reflection of you, and you are hands-on with everything as it's going. Yeah. So it's not just punching a clock.
No, it isn't. It really isn't. Because, when you think about it, you start with a cow, and she's just a cow. Then you put a bull with her, and all of a sudden she's got a little calf growing in her. Didn't have anything to do with me. I didn't. All I did was just expose them together. Yeah. And then all of a sudden that calf is born. And that year when I lost 20 of them, I saved 40 of them. And I'm going to say every single one of those needed my attention. And you can only do what you can do. And there were 20 of them that died, but there were at least 40 of them that I helped, that I was instrumental in them staying alive. And if you don't get a reward out of that, there's something wrong. Yeah. You're in the wrong job or something. Yep. So, but like you say, that year I knew, even though I got a great sense of accomplishment and gratification from helping 40 calves stay alive, I still knew I took a 20% pay cut, and there's not that kind of margin. Yeah. So, go figure.
Plus,
I know.
It just hurts to lose those animals, too.
Exactly.
Because you were probably trying just as hard to save them.
You're there fiddling with them, and they're dying in your arms. There's just nothing fun about that. I hate that. That just tears me up.
What was it? What was going on?
It was cold. Yeah. It was, it started snowing the first day they were born. I started calving. First calf born in the snow, and it was a real wet snow. And so they melt down in the snow and get cold. And, if you weren't right there within 15 minutes, they were too cold to stay alive. They weren't dead right then, most of them. Yeah. You get them in the house, you bring them in the house, and, you try heat blankets and, bathtubs full of warm water and stuff and try to bring them back to life. And some of them actually would be alive for, 6 or 8 hours. And then they were just so weak that they just could not maintain. And like I say, I had umpteen calves die in my arm. This spring, I had a heifer calf that I was out there, and this calf I couldn't feel a heartbeat, but I thought there might have been a little flicker. And I spent an hour and a half CPRing him, breathing in him, giving him mouth to mouth and so on. Nothing fun about that, but it's all I could do, and he died, And I come in the house, and I'm not a big crier, but I'm willing to cry, I guess, because it's heart-wrenching. It's not a little deal, There was a living being that died right there in front of your face, and so it's just I don't know. I think it's so much deeper than a job or an occupation or an endeavor. There's life and death involved at times. Like you say with the hay, if you don't put it up right, if you don't do your part and get it put up right, that dairyman, instead of getting X number of pounds out of that bale of hay, he gets less than that. Yeah. He deserves to get the right amount. He deserves to get all he can out of it. He's paying a lot of money for that. And, it's just all I can offer is my help or my input, but I don't have to cut a bunch of corners. There's no reason that I have to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty common thread among farmers. Just offer what you can. I look at the farmers that are successful, and I'm so proud of them. There's a guy over here that revolutionized this country, this area of town that I'm living in, by picking rocks. You think, picking rocks? There's no life in those rocks. Well, there's life in the dirt that those rocks are surrounded by. And he picked the rocks, and that there was a field that I'd herded cows across. I couldn't even ride a horse across it. There were so many rocks. It was just that rough, It was just barnacles everywhere, and the cows would kind of go around the rocks and stuff. And they're farming it today.
Wow.
And it was that guy's doing, single-handedly his doing. And, I'm proud of him. I think he ought to be rewarded for that in a big way.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things that I look at in my lifetime. My dad was bent on doing what he could, and he wasn't overly progressive, but at the same time, he only had what he had, and he just always did it the best he could. And it was important to him that what he said was what he did. What he did was what he said. Those two always lined up. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that the neighbor, he's a younger farmer, and there have been times when I haven't changed water, moved the lines the way I should have. Mm-hmm. I let it go because it's not that big a deal. And I was talking to him about it, and I said, I've struggled with that, getting myself to actually go out and change the water when it could have been changed, should have been changed. And he says, and he's probably been farming for 20 years anyway himself. And he says, I don't think I've ever done that. And I thought, man, I'm proud of you for, that you can say that about yourself.
Yeah.
I've never once not changed a line. There's other things he hasn't done, but as far as changing water, the one thing that probably is my weakest suit out of the whole deal, he can honestly say, I don't think I've ever not changed a line when it needed changed. Well, screw you then.
Well, Ron, thanks for having me out here to the farm.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom. I mean, you've seen a lot, and you've done a lot of thinking too, I can tell.
I really have.
And that's important. I think there's something to be said for farming for that, because you have lots of time probably out in the mower or the tractor or whatever, or working with cattle where you have time to think deeply about stuff, Yeah. And that's something that, in my office job, I don't always get. And I miss that.
Yeah, but you're driving down the road.
That's true.
I would challenge
for the podcast now. Yeah.
I really would. I would challenge you to, to consider the importance of what you're doing. Not just the doing it, but the importance of it. And, because someday there'll be a day when you're got your feet up or in the evening or whatever, and you say, I think I'll just watch some more YouTube or dink around, do something.
Yeah.
You could redeem that time better, and either do or don't. It's up to you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you again. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. Glad to do it. You're welcome here anytime, by the way. You can come in, and I'll either put you to work or visit with
well,
you.
I might do that. Sometimes I just have a little bit of a craving to get out in the field somewhere.
This could be your lucky day.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. These are the stories of the people who grow your food.